In the last devlog, I said I was going to try Godot and try coding, and that went so fucking well. Jesus Christ, why did I decide to do? Hello, my name is Omar Jazz, and I have tasked myself to make a visual novel by myself. Today is devlog number 8, so without further ado, let me show you what I've been working on. So at the end of the last video, I mentioned that I was going to try and learn Godot. Now, Godot is the game engine that a lot of people have been using to make 2D games, and I thought I'd give it a shot. So I downloaded Godot just online like anybody else would, and I loaded it up, and I was greeted, and I was very overwhelmed. And my brain thought, how hard can it be to figure out a game engine? Short answer, very fucking hard. Now I know using a game engine like this is essential for the game making process, and I did start off with some video tutorials online, but even then, it was very hard for my brain to get around this. Now I know there's going to be a lot of you watching this and be like, oh, well, you know, code, you need this to make games. But what I think I've realized in this is how my brain works. I'm very visual. And for the prototype in the previous devlog, I used something called Visual Novel Maker, which had almost like a flowchart system, and it was easy for my brain to figure out what's happening. I can control it a bit more easier. And what I found out is if it works, don't fix it, don't change it. I think I'm getting too far ahead of myself, so what I've figured out is if we get rid of 2 seconds, just burn this and delete, or put a big X through it, we'll just put a big X through it. That learning Godot was a big mistake. Maybe something for way further down the line or for another project, but I think I'm getting ahead of myself and I realise that I need to get something done, and Visual Novel Maker is the easiest way for me to do it and to rack my head around. Otherwise I'm going to be spending years on a project, and for this being my first game, I want to take out as much busy work as possible. I'm sorry for those who use Godot, I know it's a great engine, but for me, I do not have a coder's brain. I have an artist's brain, with pretty colours and rainbows, and it's the occasional unicorn, and cats eating ramen. So, we're going back to Visual Novel Maker. I realise I have to explain this because of the last devlog I did mention it, so I feel the need to explain myself, but it doesn't matter, I've explained it, it's fine now, everything's fine, it's fine. So on to the main part of this devlog, the meaty part. Today we're going to be trying to create in the UI design, which is going to be the main focal point for my visual novel. It's what all displays the text, the character names, all the menu options, everything's going to be there. Essentially, this is going to be creating the main screenshot of what the game's going to look like. At the moment, I've just got backgrounds and characters, so the final UI on top is the icing on the cake for this. So what I did first was I started gathering referencing other visual novels, referencing other video games, trying to figure out something that I could either take inspiration on or take little elements from and add it to my own. Now for a visual novel, the main UI would be a text box, followed by a box for the name to be displayed so you know who's talking, and then either a menu button elsewhere so they can access, going back to the main menu, settings, save buttons, load buttons, etc. And in Affinity Designer, which was my design program of choice, basically like Adobe Illustrator but without the subscription model. Go check it out, it's really good. And I took the background that I already had made, took one of the characters I had already made as well, popped it on top of one another and started creating UI designs. And it had quite a few variants, starting from the vaguely generic to having, the text box at the bottom, at the top. The name box is part of the text box, the name box above it, different fonts, different colors, different opacities, which is very important because I want to be able to show the background and the characters underneath the text box. After that, I kind of took what I thought were the 8 best ones. I did what any sane person would do and I asked Reddit. And I actually ended up with a short list, just based off what people were saying. So at the end, I basically had this big tally chart of what people were saying about it and which ones they preferred. And from that, I had about 4. Some people had some really good discussions, mentioning, readability, making sure that it wasn't too transparent so you could A, read the text, and B, see the artwork, which I think is very important. Some people also mentioned things like the spacing in between the words, making sure you're using the correct font so you can also read it as well. At one point I did have the serif ones, like a Times New Roman, but then someone said it was quite hard to read compared to the other ones, which I did agree with. There is a reason why Times New Roman isn't really used anywhere anymore, and things like Calibri and Arial are used a bit more now. It's readability, and I think it's something that you do need to consider, especially if, for a visual novel, you're going to be doing a lot of reading. So that's kind of the direction I went with. I also found this font here, which is called Mercy Crystal. Read it, please read it. I can't pronounce that. This is the font I'm going to be using for the logo as well. This is part of the next video, and this is one of the fonts I'm going to be using for it. But I did use this for the names, so it has a bit more cohesion and a bit more consistency with the overall look and feel of the game. And when all was said and done, after all these different versions, I ended up with this version. It's kind of a mashup of different things. You know, the scale of the text box, I didn't want it to be too big, so it took up everything, especially when they're just going to be saying one word. And it has enough space to be able to display 2 lines of text, which if a lot of the characters are going to be speaking back and forth, I think 2 lines is just about enough. And I don't know exactly what's going to be said at the bottom with autosave load and settings. They're just placeholders. We'll figure those out when it actually comes to making the game. The thing on the bottom right that you see is a little arrow. This is going to be animated up and down as well, that you also see in some visual novels. But at the moment, this is just the visuals. And technically, this is almost the first screenshot, or the first concept screenshot of what the game's actually going to look like finally. And it's actually quite exciting to be able to see this in full colour. So with the UI done, I can basically tick this off for now. I'm going to be implementing this in the game engine when it comes to making it. And that's pretty much it for now. Now all we've got left to do is to go onto Mero, which has been my planning software of choice. Click on the UI and basically mark it as complete. And that's pretty much it. The UI is pretty much sorted, and that's essentially the first screenshot of the game. So, in the next episode, we're going to be naming this game and creating a logo. So, without further ado, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next devlog. See you soon.